Hello. Welcome to Kindly Neurodivergent with Kay. This show is to spend quality time with each other, kindly discussing the similarities and wide range of differences we experience. The experiences we discuss on this show are for educational purposes only. Please do not substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Before we begin, I respectfully request that if you witness any pauses during this show, please continue watching. I'm composing a spontaneous comment or question, someone processing their thoughts, in addition to repeating something that was unintelligible or misunderstood. It is natural discourse, and we can choose not to say anything while this is occurring. Sharon Cable has worked with neurodivergent people for over 45 years. She has worked as a teaching assistant, job coach, and program director of respite, recreational, and residential programs. Her professional background has enabled her to facilitate parent groups and advocate for families as they navigate a challenging system. She also has the personal experience of raising a neurodivergent son. Welcome, Sharon.
Hello, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Please introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Sharon Cable, and Kayla pretty much said it all. I've been working in this field for a very long time. I started off with a bachelor's degree in psychology, and what do you do with that? I was exploring different fields and didn't know what I wanted to do, if I wanted to be a school psychologist or what I wanted to do. So I decided to take some time off and worked as a substitute teacher. And that's really how I got into working with kids with disabilities. I was working in one class and they hired me to stay on as a teaching assistant. And that's how it all started. And my husband and I moved to California when we were married. And I worked in this field in California before my children were born. And in California is where I had my two sons. And then we came back here and we're still here.
Interesting about psychology.
Yeah, at that point, they said, "Oh, you have a degree in psychology. You probably know about more about autism than anybody." I'm like, "No, not really." But so that's how I started getting into we're actually working with kids with autism because they figured I had the most experience, which I really didn't. I really didn't. But
I'm Kayla Ireland. I have cerebral palsy. What were your experiences with any similar autism-focused centers and/or groups?
well, I worked for an agency called CAR in California, and that was sort of a bigger version of Focus where I work now because they had an infant program, they had an after school recreation program, a swim program, they had a therapeutic pool, they had a group home, they had a respite house for people to stay at. So it was many programs. And I started working there part time, hoping that I'd get a bigger position. So I worked in all the programs part time until a supervisor position opened up. And then I became the supervisor of the after school recreation program, then the program director. And then over the years, I was there 17 or 18 years. I worked in all the programs eventually. So that's where I got most of my education about autism with many training sessions and conferences and things like that and on the job training.
How has your experience changed your view of autism?
Hmm. Let's see. I am much kinder to parents. I understand what they're going through. Once you start working with kids on the autism spectrum, there's such a diverse group of people that some have behaviors that are very difficult, some have quirky things that make it very difficult to parent and can be really disruptive in a family. So I think I've really come to appreciate parents and all they do to get the best they can for their kids and how big a struggle it is to get what your child needs in this world.
Every diagnosis is a spectrum.
That's true. That's true. And people are individuals. All people are individuals anyway. And then when you get people with autism, they're all unique individuals as well, or any neurodivergent difference. I expect so.
What red flags did you notice with your son?
Well, at that time when my first son was born, I was working with kids with with autism. So I saw autism everywhere. And I thought right away, wow, my son has a lot of autistic characteristics. And then everybody said, "Oh, you're crazy. You just think that because you work with kids on the spectrum. He's fine. He's fine." And I said, oh, "Okay." And there's a big difference between growing up in a family with three girls and then having two sons in your family. I found them to be much more active and they're always bumping into things and knocking things over and just wanted to be a lot more physical. So what we did is we walked down the street. We had a park, a big, huge park, just 10 minutes down the road, 5 minutes down the road, probably. And we went there every day and we play outside a lot. We walked everywhere. So it seemed that things were going pretty well. And then when I had my second son 3.5 years later, it was more of the same. So I thought, well, this is the way it is, I guess. But the big difference came when my first son went to kindergarten. He was still 4, so he's pretty young. And he went and he loved kindergarten. He did so well. They wanted him to skip grades. I said, no, no, no. He was an excellent reader. He was reading on the third grade level or something at that point, and he just loved it. But, Kayla, then my second son started kindergarten, and he was the classic kid hiding under the table, holding his ears and crying. And I said, I brought an autistic kid to school today. And the teacher at that point said, "Oh, I'm sure it's not autism, but maybe we should have the school psychologist take a look at him." And that's where it all started for my son
I
and daughter.
have two sisters.
That's the same family I had growing up.
Is focus only for people with autism?
Well, it's called Focus Center for Autism, but we have had people that had a lot of anxiety, depression, ADHD or ADD, things like that. It's really if you feel that you fit in the group, you're welcome. It's that kind of thing. So if you're comfortable with the group that we're working with and you seem to fit in, you're always welcome.
You don't need an autism diagnosis.
Yeah, not necessarily. Not necessarily. If you have enough characteristics that you fit in with the rest of the group, if you feel like this is a comfortable place, most people who are at Focus are there and they feel like they really fit in. They feel like finally there are people who understand me. I feel like I've come to the right place. We have a fresh start school, so we do have students there, and they just feel comfortable, like they finally fit in. People understand them.
How is focus different than other centers?
Well, Focus uses mostly milieu therapy. A lot of people think about ABA, applied behavior analysis, when they think of Focus. And that is one way to go. And we have a consultant at Focus who does ABA, but mostly we use milieu therapy, which is really just using everything in your environment to learn your social skills and your pragmatic language and stuff like that. So it's just using the environment around you and giving people a chance to do their best and try their best, and it's worked. We've seen some great results with a lot of kids and adults.
I never heard of that therapy.
We actually used something similar in California. We didn't call it milieu therapy. That's something our executive director coined herself, milieu therapy. But using everything in the environment as it would be kind of naturally in life. And you can redo it and practice it again, and people can help you and give you clues on how to better interact or what would have been a better way to say something or do something. So it's like a comfortable place to practice. One of the guys who's graduated, who's much older now, had said focus is like a social incubator. You get, and my own son says focus lets you try and try to do a good job, and they let you keep trying until you get it right, and they don't judge you. So it's that kind of thing where you can feel comfortable and use the environment to work on the skills you need.
Does Focus provide sibling focus support groups and or events?
Over the years, we have, right now, we don't have a siblings group. We just haven't had the interest, but we've done some things in the past. And it's kind of nice when siblings can get together. And sometimes you just want to complain about your little brother or your little sister and get all the attention. Not unlike regular families, like other families, I think, but you know that the other siblings understand you, know what you. Yeah.
Does Focus offer respite so parents, guardians, and or caregivers can participate?
We did have a parent support group that met in person. Right now, we're still on Zoom, but when were in person, we'd meet at 6, and the kids would come, and the staff would give the kids dinner and then let them play games or video games and stuff, while we parents were in the other room talking and sharing experiences and resources.
Awesome.
That's a good thing. It'd be very helpful.
What is a coordinator of support services?
That's me. Basically, it was a new position at Focus, and we were trying to give families support, families who don't have any other resources right now. There's this could be a whole nother podcast. There is a thing in Connecticut where for developmental disabilities, you have to have an intellectual disability in order to get services from the Department of Developmental Disabilities. We're trying to change that. Many other states don't go just by IQ, they go by how you're functioning in society. So a lot of people with autism have an IQ that's 70 or above, considered normal, but they have a lot of other issues, so they could use help. So I'm trying to bridge that gap a little and give these families something until they can get a job or whatever.
Is it new?
You mean, is it new that we have that situation? That's always been that way, unfortunately. We're trying to change it, and we did develop a program called the Autism Waiver Program here in Connecticut. And that program is actually for people who have an IQ of 70 or above, but still need support in getting jobs, living on their own, things like that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are like hundreds, actually, probably a couple thousand people on the waiting list for that. We are one of them. My son is one of the people on the waiting list.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. There are not enough services, especially for that specific group. And I don't know, maybe we just didn't realize at that time when they developed the Department of Developmental Disabilities, they didn't realize that there were people who have a normal IQ, but they have other issues that get in the way. So they cannot get a job or they cannot go to school or whatever they need to do as an adult. So they're not independent. So we're trying to make those people independent so they can support themselves eventually.
How do other developmental disorders affect autism?
Well, I mean, sometimes they do overlap. Like some people have an intellectual disability and autism. Some people with autism have depression, anxiety, ADHD or ADD. Those can be OCD. Those can be characteristics of your autism, or you can actually, if it's really pretty intense, you can actually be diagnosed with both things at the same time. So it gets tricky. It does get kind of tricky.
Or multiple?
Yeah. Yeah. My own son, Alex, my younger son, has autism, another mood disorder, and schizophrenia. That's a lot for any one person to deal with. And about less than 2% of people with autism actually have full blown schizophrenia. Some people have bipolar disorder or affective schizoaffective disorder, but that's a little rarer than anxiety and depression and those things. It's a lot.
What assists you to be effective in your role?
Well, not as effective as I'd like to be, to tell you the truth, Kayla. At this point, we're really just providing some recreation and social skills for our folks. We started just ironically right before the pandemic hit. At the end of 2019, yeah, it was awful. We got some parents together and we said, okay, your guys have graduated from high school and their transition program. They're not working, they're not in college. What are we going to do? So we were starting some social activities. And the Wednesday before we were going to meet on the following Sunday, they virtually closed the state down and had like no recreation at all. So we started putting it all on Zoom, which actually became more successful than I thought it would.
I did the transition program and I'm in college.
Good for you. Good for you. Alex did a transition program and he did get an associate's degree at Tunxus. I think he took about 8 years. It was, he took a couple classes at a time, but he had to have somebody with him all the time. You do, just to keep him from raising his hand or calling out the answer. But he really enjoyed college. Lived at home, went to Tunxus Community College.
Mhm.
That was really a good time for him. I can't recommend them enough. Tunxus Community College was great.
My home campus.
Really? Oh, what a coincidence. I always tell people, it's a great place. I love even the setup. You park, you go in, and you're enclosed in that area. Yeah, that's great. And we found the teachers were fabulous. He had a math tutor. Um, that was great. That was great. He wound up getting a leadership award.
Wheelchairs.
Yeah, yeah, it is better for that too, I think. Yeah, I think it's just a very welcoming campus. I think it's really,
Mm.
really great. And the people were great. He really loved his Spanish teacher, and he got a leadership award for the Spanish club he went to. So it was a lot of good things, a lot of good um, parties and activities he attended.
Yeah.
That was a good place.
I have been online classes since COVID.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, COVID worked out good for Alex because he graduated during COVID and it was in person. You did too? Oh no, outside, in person. They only had about 12 people because they broke it down in really small groups. So the graduation, because he's so overwhelmed by big groups and noise and stuff, graduation was perfect. Outdoors, brief, small group. It really worked out well for him. He was very happy with that.
I didn't get my final months in the transition program.
Oh yeah, you're younger than Alex. See, Alex is 31. So he was out of school and just taking classes at Tunxus when that all came about. Woohoo. Yeah, that was a crazy time here, wasn't it?
26.
26, yeah, like Aaron, huh? Yeah. Oh, the Zoom program. We wound up doing stuff on Zoom. And at first it was so difficult because we'd have 6 or 8 people all trying to talk, and oh, it was just noise. And every time we'd finish, I had a headache from trying to navigate that. And then after a while, it got more and more smooth, and people understood we had to take turns. And it transfers to real life too when you're in person, because we learned to really wait until the other person was done talking and then start. And then, so we're still on Zoom today, believe it or not. They don't want to cut out those calls. So we're on Zoom still.
Why did Zoom work better for parents?
No.
The big thing was transportation, Caleb, because none of the folks in my group drive. They're all adults, they're over 22, they graduate and everything, but getting rides to activities can be hard. And we have people all over the place, so trying to connect. So, what we do now is we started with Friday Night Social Club on Zoom. Then we added nightly check ins, which were 8 to 9 o'clock every night. Then it was still not enough. So we have 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, that we're on Zoom from 3 to 5, playing games and doing other fun stuff. So we're on Zoom quite a bit. I thought when the pandemic was over, we would stop, but they don't want to give it up. They like it. So,
I totally understand the transportation issues.
I bet. Yeah. And then even in bad weather, we could be on. If it's raining, snowing, icy, dark, we can be on no matter what. And now, even when we're in person, we use a Zoom option so that people can do either one. So it works out really good. It works out great. You always know you can talk to a friend at night. Nice.
I am lucky to have a great family.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. And most of our folks still live with the families, except the ones that are in Washington House. You do too? Yeah. Yeah. Alex still lives with us, so that
Are
does
your
help.
daily check-ins important?
I think so, yes, because the guys, they could be home all day, they could be bored or lonely, and every night they know all they have to do is click in and they have an hour with friends. And the way we do it now is everybody, when they first come in, they have a chance to talk. They can tell us what they did during the day. If something's bothering them or they're worried about something, they can bring it up right then. And everybody takes a turn. So it's kind of nice. People will listen to whatever it is you have to say. That's helpful. It's been helpful.
How is it different than family members checking in?
That's a good question. Sometimes when you're a young adult, The problem of the day is your family. Sometimes people just like to complain or say, gee, my mother got really mad. And then we talk it out and you go, oh, I see why she got mad. So sometimes it's nice to talk to people your own age that might be feeling the same thing. I mean, most of our folks have families and they're very supportive and, they live with them and that's a positive thing. But it's nice to have people your own age that you can talk to sometimes. And mostly we're playing games and having fun during our calls.
Is it therapy session?
Really, no. No, it's really not. The folks have their own therapists and their own psychiatrists and the people they see outside of this. Focus does some therapy, but not our group is mostly social, recreation, fun stuff, practicing work skills a little bit, but we're trying to get them into work programs that can work on that more.
You talk about social learning in small peer groups. Please talk about that.
Okay. Um, there are such things as social skills classes where you actually go to a class, you sit for an hour, you talk about it, you work on it. That's important. And most of our folks have been through those as when they were younger and coming, but you need a place where you can actually practice it. You practice it out in the world and you don't always get the feedback you need. This way, when we're on Zoom or we're in person, they're small groups, so you can talk about what went wrong if somebody got mad or what went right or how our social skills are going. It's not always the person who's talking the most that has the best social skills. So we have to watch out that we're taking turns and just working on social skills in the actual setting instead of just like a classroom setting out in the community, wherever you are. You want to work on it.
Is it hard to keep them engaged on Zoom?
Sometimes, yeah. In the beginning, it was awful. It was very, very difficult. And I knew, like at the end of, we were on for an hour, and at the end of the hour, I would have a headache just from I had to mute people to
Yeah.
get them to understand how to take turns and stuff. In the beginning, I had my hand on the thing here and I was on the mouse and I was muting people. I said, remember, one person has to talk at a time. Then for a while, we muted everybody and we had them just unmute when they were talking. And then they kind of got the hang of it. And some people talk really fast, some people talk slowly, and you just have to be patient and let everybody have their turn. So we're much better at it now. Much better.
How long did it take for them to get used to?
Probably it was a couple of months. And we met every single day, 365 days of the year. We were on Christmas night, New Year's night, we were on Thanksgiving every day, just because we were so worried about the social isolation during the pandemic. And then we kept doing it. And then my boss said, you really can't be working all those holidays. So we're on every night. I think we have 11 holidays that we don't come on, like Christmas, New Year's, 4th of July, that kind of thing. But it took a few months until it really got pretty smooth. And now it's really pretty smooth. Sometimes we talk over each other, but that happens in a regular conversation, right? Sometimes you talk over each other and it's just kind of normal. I say, oh, sorry.
Explain what kinds of activities help your participants.
Well, really, just about anything young people like to do. We do things like walks and hikes. We're not a very athletic group, so that's most of our physical stuff. Although we do have some guys going to the Y now and trying swimming and a little bit of weightlifting. But we'll do stuff like we have a book club where we can all talk about the books we're reading. Um, Things like Friday night social club, we mostly play games. We try to do board games and card games rather than just video games. Usually, the folks in our program are pretty good at video games. It's something they can do when they're home alone.
Mm.
You can even play over the internet with friends and stuff. So when we're in person, we try to do things that you can't do when you're in your room by yourself. So
Mm.
it's more like board games, card games, even silly things like charades. We go to the movies, go out to eat, go bowling, things like that that you can't do when you're home alone.
Perfect.
Now we try to change it up a little and try new things. Sometimes you're surprised. You might find something you like besides video games.
Mm.
What theories and therapies do you believe assist autistic people?
Well, my favorite is milieu therapy because that's what we used with Alex at Focus. He came to Focus when let's see, we were in California for about 18 years.
Mm.
Then we came back here. Alex was going into third grade then. And he was still in the regular ed school system. And it was kind of funny how it worked out. We realized that he needed to have a one-on-one aide with him, somebody that could keep him focused he was running all over the place. He had a lot of energy. And
Mm.
it was kind of strange because when we first came here, he had some odd behaviors, but the kids all just said, "Oh, he's from California," as if all the kids in California did these things. But
Mm.
for that first year, that was all he needed. He would run through games at recess and just interrupt things, and people would just go, "Oh, he's from California," and the other kid would go, "Oh, okay." And it wasn't until the next year and that I think is when we started was the next year that we actually started Focus. The first time we went there, he was running all over and just couldn't even participate. He was all over the place. And they said, well, maybe he needs to wait a little while. And then out of the blue, about a year later, we were driving home and he saw the building. He said, Mom, I think I'm ready to go back to my Focus program. And at first, I didn't even know what he was talking about. And I said, well, okay, we'll give it a shot. And then he was able to say, and at first, he didn't say anything. He could talk. He did have, he did have verbal skills, but he just wouldn't say anything. He wouldn't do anything. He would just kind of sit back and watch what the other kids were doing. For quite a while, he just kind of watched and he would walk around a lot and then gradually he would start participating. He would sit, and then finally he would answer questions and participate in the games and things. And that was where he kind of had his friends and his social life at Focus. At school, he did the academic stuff. And then after school, he went to Focus and he played. And that's where he kind of developed some friendships with actual people his age. So that was a huge thing for us. He was at Focus all up until he graduated. You could even go to your 22 during your transition program. So he went there after school and he started doing the Friday night social club. And that was really huge for him. He was the one that used to say, Focus is great because you can practice and practice until you get it right. He goes, I'm practicing to be a teenager, and they let me practice until I do a good teenager job. Okay. He
Mm.
enjoyed that. They made it fun. They made the learning fun. So that's a favorite.
Talk about how therapists assist in activities.
Well, when you're actually in therapy, it's more intense, like when you're working with an occupational therapist or a speech therapist, or like the one I met on your podcast. Um, in our group, we're more like facilitators. We support them where they need it and kind of back off and let them practice where they don't need it. So you'll see I tell my staff, I really like it when you're in a group doing your social program and a parent would come in and not know who the staff is because everybody's interacting and looking like they're having fun. And it's hard to pick out who the staff are.
Balance.
That's when I think you're doing a good job.
Balance.
Yeah. Yeah. Get some balance there. It's not the adult telling the kid what to do. It's we're all adults working together trying to find the right way to do things or a good way that works for you.
Please discuss how you accommodate individual strengths and interests.
Well, we have quite a variety. The one common thread we have is music. Everybody has, now it's different genres, maybe. Some people like metal, some people like country, some people like rock. So that's our common thread. But we have individuals who know everything there is to know about Army planes or Navy planes or whoever's got the planes, all kinds of military planes, all kinds of aircraft. We have somebody else who knows everything about the Yankees. We have somebody else who knows everything about the Red Sox. So there we have a little friction there. We have other people that are interested in doing regular things like cooking. Some people are pretty good at cooking. Some people love movies. A lot of people love movies. We have different interests in the group. Well, Aaron, as you know, he knows everything about music, just about, and he's doing his
Yeah.
radio show now. That was a dream of his, as you saw in his podcast. But so he is our expert on music. Any questions about music? Aaron's the one we go to. Yeah,
Do you think there's still a large gap in these services?
yeah, yes. Especially where the IQ is concerned. It, if you have autism and your IQ is 70 or above, there are no services. I mean, you can still get the services at school, the occupational therapy, speech therapy, the things you need, like other people with different issues that they need to work on during school. But once you graduate, and what I found is most of these folks still need help getting a job, even though they did the transition program and they might have even been successful in those jobs. Getting a job out in the real world is a lot harder. Um, and sometimes it's just,
Exactly.
hmm? Oh, explain that. Well, like I had a young man who went on a job interview.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yes. So you found that situation to be true too? Yes. The most successful people we had were people that the parents knew somebody, had a friend that said, "Oh, I'll give your son a chance or I'll give your daughter a chance," because they had no services. They have no job coaches or anything to go with them. Big problem. Big problem. You're in the same boat. And sometimes you create a job, like a podcast. That was a smart idea. That's a good idea.
Another disability-related work.
Another, let's see. You mean a job that might work?
I do this another disability-related work.
You do? You do have oh, I did not realize that. Did not realize that.
How do participants build positive relationships?
Yes, that's kind of the ultimate goal, to actually develop relationships with people in the group and do things outside of the group. Even, just you and one other person that you're close to, or two other people, something like that. And we've started to do that, and parents have been great about helping to facilitate that. We have two folks now that live in the same apartment complex, so that makes it easier. And their parents will carpool the two of them. And then one brother has gotten to be friends with the other fella, so that works out good. And they'll get together on the weekend and do something. And then we have a couple people who live within walking distance, which is great because then they make a plan and the one walks to the other's house or they meet somewhere. I try to find some activities that are within walking distance because once you're living on your own, you have an apartment and you don't drive, anything that you can walk to is going to be helpful just to make life easier. Transportation is a big issue in this field, a big problem.
Especially if there are safety concerns.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's a big problem with some of the folks that have autism. They don't have an intellectual disability. My son, I'll use as an example. If you asked him how to safely cross the street, he would tell you stop at the curb, look both ways, make sure nobody's coming, look again, and then cross quickly. But he doesn't do it. He'll just walk out in front of the cars. It's like, what are you doing? But yeah, you have to be very careful because just because you can say it doesn't mean you actually do it.
Scripted.
Yeah, yeah, scripted. He's learned what to say, but he doesn't put it into action.
Yeah.
And Alex is very easily distracted, my son. So he said, I don't think I should have a driver's license because I don't pay attention. Definitely not.
How do you build employment skills?
That is very tough because the attention span is often a big issue for our guys. So we start in the transition program. That's where they've all gone through some type of job training. There is an organization called BRS where you can get more help. So we're trying to get people connected with them, where a job coach will come out with you temporarily. Now, in some people's situation, like again, my son Alex, he went through BRS and they how did they describe him as unemployable at this time. Now he might be able to stay more focused and learn to do a job. It's not so much learning to do something, some task, but it's staying focused on not getting distracted or walking off or
Yeah.
yeah, and he has to know what you expect. When it's a routine job and it has steps and you just do all the steps and you're done, and then you go to the next one, that's one thing. But when it changes and now you have to come over here and do something different, and I have to, so it's hard for him to make the changes too. Transitions can be hard for folks with autism.
Yeah.
Is there a growing understanding of autism?
Yes, yes, it's definitely getting better. It was very different when I first started in the field and they said, oh, you have a degree in psychology? Okay, you do the autistic kids. I'm like, what? And now people have training. There are programs. People are getting educated how to work with people on the spectrum. There's a lot more literature out there. There are many, many, many more books and things to read, even for parents. I was really lucky. By the time I had my kids, I knew a lot about autism, but most people don't. But it's getting better. Getting better.
Even for other family members.
I have another son. We don't have other family members that have autism, though. Well, let's just say that have been diagnosed. Sometimes, if you look back, you have an uncle or an aunt or a grandparent or somebody that seemed different. And looking back, now you say, hey, I think they were on the autism spectrum, but they were never diagnosed because it wasn't
Mm-mm.
that well known at the time. Usually can find some similar characteristics in parents. I know my husband and I have some characteristics that Alex has, but things are people know a lot more about autism than they used to. Most people have heard about autism and have been in some way touched by autism, somebody they know
Yeah.
or a relative, uh, which is good. People understand it better.
How can good behavior look different for people with autism?
Yeah. Um, Sometimes a person with autism will think, oh, I'm doing a great job. I'm being very social. But to other people, they seem kind of withdrawn. But for them, it's really outgoing and social. They're putting out their best foot. So you have to kind of look at each individual. And people are different anyway, neurodivergent or not, people are different. Every person's unique. Some people are more outgoing. Some people are just more reserved, more withdrawn. So it's what you see as a great life might be different from what your son thinks is a great life. I'll never forget when Alex had friends over, he would say, they're not sleeping over, right, Mom? They're going to go home, right? And a couple hours and he's done. He's done socializing. It's enough.
Also depends on background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are you used to? What does your family do?
Mm.
What kind of things does your family like to do? That's very true. Yeah.
Reinforcement.
Ah, reinforcement. Yeah, you want to reinforce the good behavior. It's not always as simple as it looks because,
Mm.
again, using Alex, used to get those stickers for doing a good job. And he would get so anxious about the sticker and when to get the sticker and where is he
Mm.
going to get the sticker. He would be so anxious that it was better not to give him a reward. Sometimes backfires.
And medication side effects.
That's a tough one. Alex does take medication, mostly for the schizophrenia, because that's the only way to keep it under control. But there are many medications that people on the spectrum use too to help with anxiety, depression,
Mm.
OCD type things, help to focus. And there's always a concern for side effects. So you always have to be careful, follow the directions carefully. Alex actually had a very bad experience with that when his medications really went awry and he got worse and worse. At one point, he had 4 different movement disorders caused by the medication, and it was hard to diagnose because they were all working together. So every day he was moving in a different way and having different reactions. And it took so long to get him off. He had to wean him off one slowly, then the other. And I think he was on 3 at the time. So that took the better part of a year to get over that. That was the worst I've ever seen of side effects.
I have movement disorders such as spasticity.
His, thankfully, are gone after he got off all the medication. We started him on different medication. He was very lucky, though. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. And you see tardive dyskinesia on TV a lot now, commercials. That was one that he had, one of them. But
From
totally gone.
CP.
Yeah, cerebral palsy. Yeah. He does not have that, although he has seizures Seizures were they were a side effect of one of the medications. So now he has another medication. And that's tricky because now he's tall. He's like 6 feet tall. So if he falls, he could easily get hurt.
Pepper gave me rage.
Rage? Well, I mean, yeah, you do see it in people with autism. I think it's mostly the frustration of not being able to make yourself known, not people not understanding you. You need to have a way to communicate, is what I'm thinking.
The medicine Keppra affected my mood.
Oh, yeah, that's very hard. That is very hard. Sometimes the medication makes you feel worse in some ways in the mood. And well, Alex has the mood disorder, so the medication should make the mood better, but you have to really watch.
We did not know it until I got off of it because how long I was on it.
Wow, yeah, that's tricky. You could be on something for quite a while and not even realize until you get off of it. Oh, yeah, that must have been kind of rough.
Thank you, Sharon, for doing this with me.
Well,
It
thank
was
you for
great to
having me.
have you on.
Thank
Please
you for
share
having
the
me.
talk show with your family, friends, and colleagues. Everyone watching, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and share on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.